Hey guys, how's it going? Hope you're doing well. My name is Crown, and today I'm going to read you some very interesting stories that I hope that you're gonna love. And now, without further ado, let's go! So I work for Taco Bell. There are like 4 Taco Bells in my area. I work at one by a freeway, but I live next to a different one. So 2 separate issues have occurred from this. Issue 1. Sometimes when product is low before order days, we borrow from other stores. Well, my store needed pizza boxes, and they sent me to one of the stores nearby to pick a case up for us. Like most chains, the stores are set up similarly, and we all have the same uniforms. Usually the cashier knows we're coming and we just go get the stuff ourselves. Let the manager in charge know we got it, and go on our merry way because we have stuff to do at our own store. So I come in, the cashier smiles and says the stock is by the dishwasher in the back. I go back there and tell the manager in charge I am there to grab the pizza boxes. They were different shirts so they can tell them apart. She waves me on and continues making her order. As I'm looking for the case I need, another manager in charge, who I think was a general one, comes past me and starts yelling at me like so. Why the hell aren't you taking front orders? I don't need you stocking right now. Get up there. The walk-in has a line. Oh no ma'am, I'm from my store street. I'm just here to get pizza boxes. Paul, you work for my store. I freaking know it. You are the new cashier, and you aren't making a good impression. Get on a damn register, it's your drawer. Hey listen, I work for my GM's name. Your manager in charge knows I'm here for pizza boxes. I am not your cashier. I'll kindly help if you are that backed up, but I'm not sure who the cashier is, and I'll need to be on my way to my own store soon. She stormed off pissed. I went back to my store only to find out she called my store all angry and told my GM I was rude and she better not send me to her store again. I told her what happened and my GM put up a note that says we're not to let that location borrow from us anymore. Second issue. I live next to a different location. I went one day with my daughter to eat because she likes the nacho cheese tacos. Mind you, I'm in blue jeans and a white shirt that says, "Let's summon demons." Taco Bell's current uniforms are all black with colored logos on the back of the shirts. I clearly don't look like an employee because I'm not. This is not my store and I wasn't even scheduled that day. We get our food, we sit, and she starts talking about her video game she beat. 5 minutes later, this woman comes up to me and clears her throat. So I look up. Don't you think taking your lunch right now is inappropriate? Your co-workers clearly need assistance. There is a large line. Lunch rush was starting for them. I'm sorry ma'am, I don't work here. I'm just trying to have lunch with my daughter. You do work here. I have seen you before. And who even brings their little child to work? Can I speak to your manager? This is ridiculous. Maybe you have seen me, but I work at a different location of the freeway, not this one. I'm clearly not in uniform, and as I said, I'm having lunch with my daughter, so I cannot assist you. I am not an employee here. A Taco Bell is a Taco Bell, right? Go behind that freaking counter and take my order. I am tired of waiting, and you just admitted to working here. Hell no, I don't work here, and I'm not taking your damn order. Leave me and my daughter alone. The lady storms off screaming she's going to get the manager. The manager is already on her way because she heard the noise. The lady screams I should be fired because I wouldn't help her. The manager knows me in my store, tells her I don't work at this location and I'm not required to assist her, but she can gladly take her order. The lady demands she calls my boss and fires me. The manager says she's not going to do that. So the lady pays for her food and storms off to the drink station. All good, right? Nope. This witch gets her cup full of soda, comes back, and throws it on my daughter and me. My daughter starts crying because she's only 5. I am this close to punching her. The manager runs over and grabs the cup from the lady and tells her she needs to leave before she calls the cops if I don't plan to already. The lady spits on the manager calls the cops, they arrest the lady, and the company gives me a day's worth of free pay for the issue she caused. And I definitely press charges too. Brace yourselves, it's a bit of a long one, but it's a prime example of how a single sentence can go a long way. So one summer at university, I took a job in the marketing department of a small manufacturing company, ostensibly creating foreign language advertising material and safety texts, as well as all the social media stuff for their upcoming move into Europe. It quickly became clear a large element of sales was involved, but I didn't mind. I was young and wanted lots of big wins for my resume. The department consisted of myself, another guy for another European language, and one hugely underpaid 16-year-old junior intern. We all worked for an absolute bandit. Hereafter, the boss, who basically had no relevant experience or competencies, but who was a smooth talker and had ensnared the company owner with some kind of evil wizardry. This boss spent most of his time running a side business off his iPhone, only stopping to literally throw things at us whilst we were on the phone, banter, to randomly paint the inside of our office jet black, ceiling included, or make insane demands like trying to force a supplier to give us a 40% discount based on our tiny firm's potential. This was all fine and kinda funny, and gave us something to laugh about at KFC during lunch. But the real pain was that whenever anyone made any real headway, sealed a deal with a supplier or vendor, completed negotiations with government agencies, secured a good rate for marketing, or found a new opportunity, and so on, he would steal the credit. The owner never caught on and genuinely thought the guy was a one-man powerhouse, despite us occasionally leaving evidence or outright telling the owner when we'd done the work, catching the boss out in some blatant lies. It was all just miscommunication in the owner's eyes. This went on for months. We were all on minimum wage or lower as interns whilst basically doing the boss job for him, as he repeatedly told us how great he was and how little we understood. We spent the summer confusing the hell out of European CEOs and purchasing directors who wondered why this mad little English company was using interns for all its international business. The other marketing guy got tired and quit, leaving just me and the junior intern. At which point I was told I had been promoted to lead the project for both countries. At this point I was now on part-time minimum wage, entrusted with planning and executing a foreign market invasion for 2 different countries solo, while the boss sold adult toys on his iPhone. Yeah, that was his side business. Even that would have been alright by me if the boss hadn't kept trying to steal credit. At one point, he jumped in a foreign language phone call I was making to a well-circulated magazine and in English said, "I'll take over. En passant bureau isn't really that important." Before promptly realizing the other party was about 60 years old, partially deaf, and spoke about 4 words of English. He handed the phone back to me, then went off to tell the owner it just landed a great rate on some ad space. Public episodes like this meant our potential vendors sensed weakness and ultimately proposed a lopsided contract, which basically stated that if our products didn't sell a certain volume, we would be liable to pay the vendor pure cash for the remainder. The certain volume was 250,000 euros. Net profit, not even gross sales, in the first 12 months. I'd never heard of such a proposal before, and even at 19, I knew it was all kinds of shady. This was the first thing I was perfectly happy to let the boss take credit for. There was no way we'd make that quota. But the clueless boss was so thrilled to have a big number to throw around, he printed the contract there and then. It had been mailed to me, but he instantly claimed he had brokered it. The absolute turnip. Now for the pro-revenge. He asked what I thought of the contract and whether we could achieve it. What I did not say was that only a world champion village idiot would sign this contract. I did not say that only an absolute adult toys vendor would go ahead with this blatantly disastrous contract without consulting the owner, as a boss had made it very clear that he was a marketing. I was a lowly intern whose opinion was no more use than a chocolate teapot. So rather than warning him that this contract was so horrible, we should burn the paper it was printed on and have the office exorcised to be safe, I instead said simply, "You're the boss, the numbers are all in a project book if you want to read it over, but if it looks good to you, the post office closes in 15. I knew without a shadow of a doubt he wouldn't bother with my boring paperwork. Not when I had dangled a chance for him to get his big win dispatched by the end of the business. And sure enough, he said there was no need to see my figures, as he had done the sums himself. I was certain it was solid gold. Funnily enough, the project book quite clearly showed that I had estimated as best as I could with no analytical experience that our gross first-year sales might top 20k if we were lucky. But anything written by me wasn't worth reading, not with the post office closing in 15. So he signed the contract and sent me running off to post it. I made copies and mailed it off to our lucky new vendors. I then took a copy straight to the owner, told the owner the project book was in a boss's office if he wanted to check the numbers, and then went to HR next door to regretfully hand in my notice before shifting it out of there before the fireworks started. Bang on opening the next day, the boss was called to a meeting with the owner. Yelling was heard. About an hour later, the boss walks off the property and a hastily typed email is sent out reminding people that only the owner and HR are signing authorized on behalf of the firm. Unfortunately, the contract was still apparently valid as a boss title, marketing director, gave him implied authority or something. I'm not a lawyer, and all I did during my final week was no boss and our project in tatters was to hang out at KFC with the other surviving intern. I wasn't at any board meetings, shockingly, but the company lawyer was there every day that week. And last I heard, the ex-boss was being sued by the company for the damages they had to fork out to the European vendor, which were potentially over 250k euros. I doubt that his adult toys dealership made enough to cover his legal fees. Before I start, I want you to take everything I tell you with a grain of salt. Every bit of information I have is at least secondhand and normally do not dabble in university politics or budgeting. I am merely a student that worked part-time for the library department I'm about to tell you about. The whole thing unfolded over the last 2 years and just culminated in what I would deem the most professional way of handling the interest of the many in spite of the greediness of the few. So I'm just a mere student at a university somewhere in Europe. The university has departments for a lot of different fields of science, but the two main players are economics and law. Both of them get anything they want, even if it happens by taking from others. When I was in my second year at this university, I started working in one of the libraries the university provided. There are 4 different libraries: law, economics, philosophy/languages, and math/science/political science/history. I was delighted to have an extremely committed boss. Now, about that boss, he was a born librarian, loving everything from upkeep of a library to doing research and providing all different kinds of services for students. Before I came to his team, he had implemented long hours in all the libraries. We were open from 8 in the morning till 12 at night. Revamped the online search and added a 3-dimensional floor plan to make finding books easier. Did reviews including the students learning the libraries 4 times a year. Developed courses for students on how to do better research, which were made mandatory in a few areas of study, and did a whole lot of other things. He truly was amazing. But as you can imagine, all of this cost a lot of money and was only possible because he found a lot of sponsors, and the biggest of which was some kind of investor who graduated from this university. Him getting all this money on board and his commitment to the cause will make his reaction to the economics department building a totally unnecessary underground section of new rooms, which also meant basically rebuilding a whole wing of the main building and going vastly over budget, much more understandable. Half a year after I started, the dean announced that there was a deficit in the budget of about 3 or 4 million euros. That in turn meant that the other departments had to take a step back and that the money from sponsors would go towards the project started by the economics department. About a month later, the library only opened until 8 p.m. and the courses on research were disbanded. Not only that, but the dean told my boss that he would have to fire at least a few of his full-time workers and give more hours and work to students like me, who normally would sort books in their free time. Needless to say, he was royally pissed. He put about 10 years worth of work into gathering money and building up his department, and he wouldn't give that up without a fight. He started by going over his own books, which proved that his whole department before the cut was functioning well under budget, and that cutting his ability to do his work was completely unjustified. He then looked over how much of the money he got from sponsors actually went to his department's budget, since when giving money to the university, the investors weren't really able to demand where it was allocated. He found out that only about half of this money actually went into his budget, which of course wasn't a problem up to that point because he had more than enough. When the next budget revision came along about a year after the budget cuts, he put forward that information and proposed an audit of the use and necessity of the building that was finished just then. You see, the economics department had argued that there weren't enough rooms to accommodate the rising number of their students. So over the next half year, the usage of the new space as well as all old spaces was monitored. This audit was finished last year in August. Meanwhile, my boss started to groom the sponsors he had pulled on board. He asked them what they thought about how the university was managed, how happy they were with their money going to other departments, and if they wanted to change anything, and they were not amused. A lot of these sponsors, including the very big one, wanted something changed. They didn't have any influence on a university politics directly, but the one who owns the money owns everything. So they went to the university and told him that they were unhappy, at which point the dean and everyone else in charge realized that if they don't change something, the money flow would dry out, only increasing the already way too big deficit. Then a result to the audit hit. After monitoring for half a year, the university found out that the amount of dedicated rooms before building the new project was more than enough, and that the project specifically was not only over budget, but the same number of rooms would have been able to be generated by renovating an older building for much less. The new rooms were also only open to students in the economics department and thus didn't really help the university as a whole. In the end, my boss got all his workers back. The libraries were again open till 12, his courses were reinstated and expanded, and a larger chunk of the budget was allocated towards the library department. The economics department, on the other hand, lost a lot of privilege. The new space was opened up for all departments, other projects were put on hold, and they were told that any further ambition that went over the now set-in-stone budget would have to be paid for by raising money from new sponsors. I am telling you this story today because my boss told me just this morning that he had raised enough money to renovate 3 of the 4 libraries, rebuilding, of all things, the economics library completely. This happened when me and my family used to live back in South Korea about 16 years ago. Please keep in mind I'm doing my best to translate in English and to the best of my memory. I don't know if the culture has changed, but back then it was okay for children to play rough, as long as they are having fun and there is sincere apologies in case anyone gets hurt, and the parents give earful and good smack on their calves. Again, this used to be a form of discipline, and I don't know if that has changed. Anyways, I was around 10 and my sister around 8. My mom, my sister and me were at a mall bookstore picking books of our choosing because we had been doing such a good job with our grades. The bookstore manager was a really cool guy directing us to books we'll be interested in. I chose a book about myth across the world for children, and my sister was fiddling around with a book about famous princesses in history. The bookstore was also selling CDs for games and programs, and although we knew my mom wasn't going to buy it, both of us were looking at games we wanted. Enter the entitled mom and her son. Both of them were dressed in very expensive and fancy-looking clothes at the time, and the bookstore manager runs over to the entrance and does a full 45-degree bow. He says, "Oh, Mrs. entitled mother's last name, what a pleasant surprise! What brings you to our store?" "Well, I figured we'd drop by your trashy store and try to see if there was anything worth buying." I let out a sigh. For a 10-year-old, I had a pretty firm grasp of what was going on, and this was no different. I immediately knew they were one of those rich snobs who think they were better than the rest. If you guys didn't know, in Korea it is informal to call someone by their first name and is considered rude unless you are close friends with them. It's also person's position/title, then last name. So any sane person would have addressed the store manager as a manager, then his last name. This lady, who was supposed to be from high school class with all her higher education, didn't even have the courtesy to respectfully address the poor manager. And the manager, who was probably scared of her influence, had no choice but to take all that. I decided to pay no mind and continue to browse those discs. Few minutes later, the entitled son, who was around 7 to 8, came next to me and snatched the game disc case that was in my hand. "You're not old enough to play this," he tells me. This kid, who was at least 2 years younger than me, was telling me that I wasn't old enough to play the game. It was rated Korea's equivalent of E10+. I tell him, "Oh, and you are? How old are you?" "Shut up, loser. I'm getting this game." Sure, whatever. I left him there and went back to browsing other games. And that's when I heard a scream from my sister. I turned around to see the entitled kid had torn out the packaging, took the disc out, and was poking my sister in the eye. Me and my mom immediately rushed over. My sister was crying while covering the eye. After seeing what had happened, my mother was really mad and started firmly, not yelling, just in a strict voice, telling the son why he did it, and asked him to apologize to my sister. The entitled mother sees this and comes over and yells at my mom. "How dare you speak to my child that way? You could traumatize my son. Your son was hurting my daughter. He could have actually blinded her. Are you going to take full responsibility for ruining her beautiful face? Your son owes her an apology, and I demand you come with us to the hospital." The entitled mother scoffs. "So what? Children are supposed to grow up like that. Your daughter should have learned to take it. My son is perfect and did nothing wrong. He doesn't owe her a thing. Besides, by the looks of it, your daughter will grow up ugly anyways." I had enough. Not only did the entitled mother act like she knew better, but she didn't feel the necessity to take responsibility to at least take us to a hospital and insult my sister. My sister had some insecurity about her look at that time. She was bawling louder after hearing this. I was usually a laid-back kid, but not this time. I stepped up and did a hard frontal kick on the entitled son. He fell on the ground and my shoe was imprinted on his clothes as he started to cry. "What the hell are you doing? How dare you, you little trash? What if there is a fracture on his ribs?" Me smirking and scoffing. "So what? Children are supposed to grow up like that, huh? Your son should have learned to take it." Noticing that I am using her own words against her, she took a moment to fumble out a few more words. "Who the hell are you to tell me how to raise my child? You don't know anything. You shouldn't talk to adults that way. It's disrespectful." "Apparently more than you. And I actually feel sorry for your son, because he's being raised by a psychotic, crude, rich snob and witch of a mother like you. Were you not taught to treat others the same way you wanted to be treated?" Like I said, I had more awareness of adult conversations compared to other kids in my age, and picked up a few swear words here and there. Plus, I watched few Korean dramas and I knew few lines. Was adding a couple of my own was definitely going to send her over the edge. The entitled mother pointing her finger on all of us. "How dare you filthy low livestock to us? I bet all of you live in some trashy low-income apartments." Me looking her dead in the eye, I say, "And I bet you just got lucky with some stuck-up doctor or lawyer when you gladly got with him after seducing him and forcing him to marry you with his child on the way, because you knew that was the only way to succeed in life. And now I bet he's busy with some sexy lady from work." Yes, I knew what those words meant, whom he has actual feelings for. I took a moment to take a breath and continued before the entitled mother could say another word. I then point my finger at the entitled son who was crying like he got hit by a bus. I say, "Which leaves that little monster you have raised as the only fruit of your labor. Good job." I say it sarcastically. This was the final nail in the coffin. The entitled mother was fuming with rage and was about to hit me with her rather hefty-looking purse, but the bookstore manager stepped in and grabbed her wrist. "Excuse me, Mrs. Entitled Mother, but I'm going to have to ask you to leave." "You can't do that. I'm on a royal membership." The manager fed up with her nonsense. "Screw your royal membership. You are banned from this store. Now get out before I call the police. I'll bring this store down by telling everyone not to. I dare you. I will make local news see the security cameras. I will make sure the local news sees the security footage. You'll be marked for mockery and shame, even from your rich friends. Emails and social medias were not around that time, so TV news was a prime way to stay alert to what was happening. The entitled mother's face was red because she knew she was at a disadvantage if police were here. Even if she didn't, the police couldn't do anything to me due to the wacky child protection law in Korea. She stormed out with a kid, then as she was walking away, I think she was covering her head in shame. The bookstore manager apologized to all of us and even gave us the game discs we've been wanting for free. My mother later disciplined me hard for using bad languages, but also was proud of me for standing up for my sister. I still wasn't allowed to play the game for 1 week after getting it. I think that was the only one I had insulted someone to that degree. Growing up under a religious family, I was taught to forgive others, have patience, show kindness, be merciful, and so on. We moved to the US 1 year later, so I have no idea what happened to both the entitled mother and her son. My sister was fine and she grew up to be a beautiful young woman with a decent paying job. You think Korea is all about K-pops, foods, neon lit nights, and generally people being nice? Well, it has its own share of crazy and deranged people. This is my first post, so I hope this fits here. I'm a full-time single dad to a 3-year-old. She has been going to the same daycare center for the last 2.5 years and not once has anything like this happened. We arrive very early to daycare, usually a few minutes before it opens because I work early. We usually wait outside quietly for the doors to open. About a month ago, a new child, we will call him Devil Child or DC, was registered at daycare. The mother, we will call her Devil Mom, also worked early and showed up usually about the same time my daughter and I do. I warmly greet her as a Devil Mom and her child walk up to the locked door, which I may add is up a small set of 7 concrete steps. I get a cold look as if it's a crime to say hello. The Devil Child is relatively well behaved the first day waiting for the daycare to open. The next morning we arrive and sure enough, the Devil Mom and Devil Kid are waiting. The kid sees the door is locked and is furiously pulling on a door handle to want the door to unlock. My daughter and I are at the bottom of the steps because she wanted to look at some new blooming purple flowers I didn't recognize in a small garden out front of the daycare. The Devil Kid hands slip off the door handle and he starts stumbling toward the steps. Dad mode activate. I leap over my daughter who's crouched looking at the flower and I reached out to stop him from falling down the stairs, catching him with one hand and pushing him back up on the top landing. Enter the Devil Mom's fury. The Devil Child stumbled a little as I pushed him back up to the top of the stairs and scraped his knee in the concrete. "Oh my god, honey bun, are you okay?" "Mommy, that man hurt me. My knee hurts." Crying loudly, clearly faking it. "How dare you hurt my son? You should be ashamed. How can you beat up a little kid?" Really? Would you rather your son smash his head on the steps and end up in a hospital? I essentially just saved your son's life. You should be a little grateful, I would think. My head began to race with thoughts like, is this dummy serious? Are you threatening my son? What? Don't ever come near me or my son again. Do you understand? I was pretty upset as I dropped my daughter off and went to work. Next day I arrived at the same usual time, but this time my daughter and I waited by the car. The Devil Child is once again pulling like heck on the door. The Devil Mom is on her phone. I stand and watch this kid as my daughter sits on the grass, minding her own business. The Devil Child hand slip. This time I am too far to help, and even if I was close enough, I was told I couldn't. The Devil Mom didn't see her Devil Child slip and couldn't react in time when he did. I watched breathless as a Devil Child tumbled down the steps. Luckily this time the kid fell in a kind of sideways roll down the steps, and thankfully he didn't hit his head. I called an ambulance and about 5 minutes later an ambulance arrived as well as 2 police officers. Where I live, if paramedics were called to tend to a minor, police are automatically dispatched. The cops asked for a statement, I gave them one, and went off to work. A week went by before I heard anything about the devil mom and her child. I arrived like usual one morning to find a man I've never seen before. He asked me, "Hi, are you the guy who called the ambulance last week for a little boy?" "Yes, I am. Is there a problem?" "No, actually, I came to say thank you for trying to save my son. We are grateful." "And the kid's mom apologizes for how she spoke to you. She was arrested that day because she was negligent and wasn't paying attention. Turns out the devil child had broken 3 ribs, his left forearm, and got several pretty substantial bruises, and is in the temporary care of his grandparents because he isn't allowed to be around his mother. I will update if new information comes. If there is anything to learn from this is don't yell at someone trying to save your child and put away your phone." Family member recently was in a parking lot accident. Supposedly, fam was backing out, other driver got impatient and tried getting around them, and fam backed into them. No injuries, but some bent sheet metal. Not 20 minutes later, another driver starts blowing up fam's phone trying to shake them down for cash and saying that it's fam's fault. They are suing unless fam meets them right now and pays them cash and so on. Fam doesn't have much experience with this stuff and is genuinely scared. Thankfully, instead of giving in, fam has the other driver call me. Ring ring and Q ranting and raving about accidents and gonna sue and so on. I asked the other driver to tell me his side of the story. According to him, it's all fam's fault. He was sitting perfectly still, 50 feet back, and fam backed into him burning rubber or some such. The other driver said that he don't wanna involve the police, but if someone doesn't pay the other driver right now, he is going to follow the law, call the police, and so follow the law, you say? Why, what a great idea. Let's do that. Me, speaking of following laws, was the damage to your car over $1,000? The other driver clearly rubbing mental hands together. Yeah, sure as hell. You filed a police report then? Nah, hell nah. Like I told you, I don't want to get your family in trouble. I just want to fix my car. Well, if damages were over $1,000, then by law we have to report it. I have your information and phone number. I'll get the report set up and have fam give their statement, and they can contact you for your side. The other driver says, nah, we ain't gonna go through all that trouble. It's an old car. I bet it ain't $1,000. But earlier you said, son, I know what I said, but you ain't gonna get the law involved. Well, I want to make sure our insurance doesn't deny your claim, so I'm going to go ahead and have a report done anyway. I'll give him your number. Click. So I call the police non-emergency line, give fam's information and explain that fam is a little shy and not used to this. Officer Friendly calls fam to get their statement, and fam gives information and other drivers' contact information. Also DL, plate number, insurance, and so on. Also describes the phone incident, demanding cash. Officer Friendly asks for my number and we talk. I detail the conversation above. Officer Friendly says he'll get back to me. About 5 minutes later, I got a call from the other driver. Oh my god, I ain't gonna make no claim. I ain't gonna sue, just tell the cops it was a mistake and I wasn't there. Me to the other driver. Well, I can't do that. I am not about to lie to the police. Ah, screw you. Click. Few days later, I got a call from a buddy I know on the force. Hey, did fam get into some kinda nonsense with a crackhead? Huh? Accident? Oh, parking lot, yeah, I made a report a few days ago. I know, I saw a family name and helped out a bit. The other driver didn't own the car. The owner had no idea the car was even in our city or that it had been in an accident. They thought one of their grandkids had it in their home city. Called the grandkid and he said his girlfriend had borrowed the car to go see her mom in another city. Asked the grandkid if he knew the other driver and that's her ex. Grandparents said okay to the girlfriend driving the car back to them when I explained that otherwise I would have to impound it until someone authorized to drive it picked it up. I asked, what about the other driver? Turns out he had a bench warrant out of the other county, which is why he didn't really want to talk to us nice officers. He was believed to be in some other state entirely. Girlfriend told us where to find him and we picked him up. The other county is sending someone to transfer him. They move kinda slow, so he's probably going to be here another week or so if you wanna meet him. No, that's alright. Just glad that's taken care of. I work as a nurse at the local jail. This plays a role later. On to our cast introduction. Me, obviously, Crazy Karen, sweet little old lady, law enforcement officer, my favorite two-legged pussycats, charge nurse, and the shift boss. I took it upon myself to hit the nearby supermarket during my lunch break to pick up some stuff to go with the chef salad I made. I love salads, y'all. Yeah, I'm Southern. Feel free to pick fun if you want. The place isn't big, but it's always clean and the staff are always nice. I hit down the aisle's plate of crackers/cookies and bottled drinks. I get down about halfway when I notice the sweet little old lady struggling to reach something over her head. I guess she's maybe 5 feet tall. I stop and ask her if I can help. I am 5 feet 10 inches, so there isn't much out of my reach. She points out her item, I grab it for her, and she thanks me for the help. I tell her my mom is about her size, so I'm used to it, and I'm just glad she wasn't stuck waiting too long for help. Right then I hear it. Dun dun dun. Crazy Karen. Now that you're done bull crabbing with that old hag, you need to put these water cases in my cart. Me turning to look at her. I'm sorry, ma'am, I don't work here. I was just stopping to help this sweet old lady. I don't want to hear your excuse. Do your job. Me, monitoring my scrubs. Seriously, I don't work here. Starting to walk away. The Crazy Karen grabs my arm to stop me, digging her nails into my arm. Do your job now. I snatch my arm away. Lady, if you ever touch me again, I will end you. Again, I don't work here. Go find an associate to do that. I take a few steps and I see a damn cam fly by my head. Cue demonic position Karen mode. I turn around to see this psycho wielding another can of veggies that she chuckles at me as hard as she can. Missing again, thank God. All the while scream about how lazy and incompetent I am and she will have my job. Mind you, I am backing further away when a cashier who can see down the aisle from the register runs our direction and another apparently called the cops. The Crazy Karen continues to yell and throw items not only at me, but at the staff that start to accumulate. Nothing she's saying is making any sense. Finally, the law enforcement officer makes it to the scene, attempts to calm the woman and of course, ends up putting her in cuffs, during which she screams sexual assault and tries to buy the guy. Staff and the sweet little old lady all gave statements about the incident. The old lady was a little shaken but unharmed as she ended up behind the Crazy Karen after she grabbed me. Once he has her under control, I check out and head back to work. I stop in medical to tell the charge nurse about the Crazy Karen and that she'll need to book her in for me. I clean the nail marks in my arm and we head back to the booking. It took some time for them to show up. Apparently, when she was in a cruiser, she began yelling about her kid being in her car. An 8-year-old. The child's father is cold. We're all standing in booking when the exterior door slides open and here comes the law enforcement officer with the Crazy Karen in tow, still acting a fool. The booking process, medically speaking, is pretty quick. Vitals and a few questions. Do you have any health problems? Are you on any medications? Are you feeling homicidal or suicidal? The Crazy Karen, eyes locked on me. What is that witch doing here? Well, she works here. Take these cuffs off me, I'm gonna kill that witch. The charge nurse tells me to go into the office and then attempts to perform the booking assessment. The Crazy Karen pretty much ignoring the questions and cussing at the charge nurse, yelling about killing me when she gets her hands free. To this, the charge nurse says to the officer, yeah, she appears to be homicidal by her own admission. She needs to go to self-harm observation. The Crazy Karen was charged for assault, child endangerment, assault on law enforcement officer, and possession of crack cocaine. She was placed in a psych cell with nothing but a turtle suit on for the weekend. Upside of this situation, the father of the child called me earlier this week to thank me because he's been trying to get custody of the child, and with this arrest has a good shot to take her on and give her some normalcy. I'm glad something good came out of this. Downside, I work the wings during medication pass that this woman will be in now, until who knows when. So I'll have updates on the Crazy Karen drama, I'm sure. To think all of this started over a trip for ranch dressing and Triscuits.